Hello YouTube. In this third and final portion of the How to Program for Yourself series, I'm going to discuss the practice of alpha and beta testing your training. And that is going to be, of course, through the review of the program. But understand that we're at a point where the program has already been written, meaning that nothing you're going to be doing during this phase will involve massive brainstorming or time spent actually writing stuff down, because that should already be taken care of. And if you haven't done it yet, if you want to program for yourself, please refer back to the videos in the description. It's going to give you a better idea, because this comes at the end. You cannot do what I'm going to describe today if you haven't done the steps that I elaborated on earlier. So here, what I'm going to define is alpha and beta testing. And these terms, if you work in tech or whatever firm that is going to try and put out projects or products for clients, you're very familiar with that, especially if you work in software development. These are phases that you run the product through to make sure that the final version you release is glitchless and as pristine as possible. Of course, it's almost impossible to release something that doesn't have some errors here and there, but the goal is to reduce them so that the client is actually happy. And in this case, the client is you. So you're both the company and the client. And therefore, you are going to have to work really hard, because what is at stake is your gains. So right now, at this state, you have a full program written, but you've never tried it. All right, we're still at the stage where you've never actually tried it, meaning that it's completely worthless, because a program that is just pure theory is completely useless. It exists in potential, but in actuality, it is nothing. You need to run it through the test. You need to run it through the battery, because trial and error is absolutely unavoidable. It needs to be done. If someone is trying to sell you a program, they better have tested it themselves, because if they haven't, most likely it's garbage. After that, you can infer knowledge if you have done a similar program in the past, but for you, most likely you haven't, because you're a novice and it's your first time writing a program. So you're between novice and intermediate. But at this stage, you might still be a novice, because you might actually graduate to intermediate, according to my own terms of what that means, as you alpha and beta test the program. So let's look at what it actually means. You have written down the program. There's a ton of mistakes in the program, that is for sure. The mistakes you have committed are greediness. Most likely you put way too much exercises, way too many sets and reps. The frequency is just way too gluttonous. In all, you're trying to do too much, and that is normal. You are excited. It's your brand new program. It's your first program. I rarely see novices who put too little, who are too minimalist, or at least they're minimalistic in their approach to exercise selection, but not in terms of raw work. They always want to do too much. And you're going to realize that really soon, but don't worry about that. So that's one thing that you might have committed. You might still have, at this point, exercises that don't actually work with you, even though that should have been taken care of in previous phases, but maybe a few managed to slip through the filter. So that will have to be taken care of as well. You might see also that the synergy between certain lifts on a certain day just don't work. They worked on paper, but now that you do it, it's just not doable, be it because of logistics in your gym, it just doesn't work because of two exercises stuck together, a superset that just isn't functional, etc., or simply because they don't work at all. They just don't function when you do them. And the last one, and usually that's more general, but you're going to find in the program that the connection between the days sometimes also doesn't work. So you have a split in head, and let's say you wanted to do leg and some iterations of back work the next day, and you find out that this just doesn't work because for some reason you're still fatigued. That is going to be taken care of as well. So pretty much what you're going to do is you're starting with something that is a massive, just a sheet of paper full of ideas, and you're going to reduce that as much as you can, meaning that most of what is going to happen during the alpha test is going to be taking stuff out, not adding stuff. Most likely if you're adding stuff and it's not in a replacement fashion, you're doing something wrong. You might still be a little bit stuck in the mindset of the pre-alpha test. The alpha test is stripping stuff away. Keep in mind, we're trying to fix something. We're not trying to reinvent it at this point. If you want to reinvent it, look at what I said with the previous videos. That means you're going to have to go through another cycle, but it's not at this point, not at this moment. It might take place when you do a new program. For now, we focus on what you've done, because at this point, This is the result of months of work, of brainstorm, of just thinking about it. And now you're putting it to the test. You do not have time to add new stuff to the table. You just don't. All right, so how are you exactly going to do it? Well, that is the easy part. You're just going to go to the gym and do your program. And most likely the program is going to be in line with your previous novice program. I highly discourage you from actually having massive jumps in volume or frequency. If you used to train 3 times a week, don't start to train 6 times a week with the same volume per day, because you're going to crash and burn. You want something that is relatively similar, but not too similar because you don't want to run the same program, of course. So it's going to be mostly related to tonnage. The tonnages need to match because your tonnage will grow up as time goes by, and you'll see that when we discuss the beta testing phase. So you go into the gym and you do the program and you note down what works, what doesn't work. And as I said, most likely what you're going to realize is what you thought on paper was going to be an hour and 15 minutes takes you 2 hours, because it's always quicker on paper. You think everything is perfect, this set, and then 3 minutes later, this set. In reality, it doesn't work like that. And this is the reason why also you need to have, before the alpha test, a broad and general idea of how long you want each day to take. Because you need to be able to tell to yourself, okay, I'm way overshooting what I wanted. That way you can actually correct and just slim the program down to something that is more realistic and fit for you, because most likely if you're working much more than you think and expected, it also means that you're going to do too much. You're going to tire yourself out too much for no benefit. So that's the alpha test. Go in and write down after every single session what was wrong, what wasn't wrong, and what is wrong, strip it away. Don't even think about it too much. Strip it away on a different piece of paper so that you have still the original form of the program with all of the ideas and the one that you're running through the alpha test. And you're going to do that for 2-3 months. The alpha test is the smallest portion. And you're going to find that in these 3 months, the program is going to take a completely different shape, because now it's an actual program. It's an actual lifting program. It's not just an idea. And that means that it's starting to work. It's starting to bear fruits. You're going to also keep an eye on progression, of course, on your ability to actually do the program week in and week out, if it's actually realistic, etc. That is also it's also going to make you take stuff away, because the recovery aspect is going to be impacted by how much work you do, and you might find that again, you were a little bit too greedy, a little bit too gourmand, as we say in French, and you try to do too much. You want to do the minimum amount of work to get the maximum amount of results. So that's your alpha phase. And it shouldn't be more than 3 months, because most of the time, if it's more than 3 months, ballpark 3 months, you're going to enter a phase where you are going to start stripping away at the skeleton of the program, the most important things, because you're going to be, again, too invested in the mindset I just described of trying to just be frugal. And then you're going to go into the other extreme that I want to avoid, where you're going to just end up with 1 lift a day, which is not the goal. You just want the program to be realistic and just take away what I can only describe as the obvious mistakes, because the alpha test is going to get rid of that. It's the things that are glaringly horrifying, meaning that they don't make sense. They did on paper, but the second you tried, they didn't. So that's that first phase of the testing. It is the most important, because it's what's going to shape the program into what it's going to look like for the rest of at least a good year. And once that is done, you enter into the beta testing phase. And these, usually when you test a product, it's not just alpha and beta, there are several betas. It can last a very long time. For you, I define the 2 phases because even though there are different types of beta phases within the program testing, in reality, they can just be incorporated into one because there's no differences between them. So the beta testing phase, the longest phase, is going to be the same as the alpha one, but much less severe, meaning that you don't want to be too trigger happy during that phase. If something doesn't work, instead of taking it out, tweak it. See if maybe you can modify the reps and the sets, maybe move it to another day, maybe do a variation. You want to be much more amicable towards the program, because it's already been through 2 phases, through the phase of writing it and through the phase of alpha testing it. So most likely, if you're confident in yourself, what you have is relatively solid. Now it just needs small modifications here and there. And you will find that phase, I said 1 year. 1 year, if you have in mind the idea of at the end of the beta testing phase, starting a new program, because it's not recommended. I don't recommend it, but most likely, the most realistic thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up at the end of the beta testing phase realizing that what you started with wasn't the best, and therefore even if you put it through the alpha and beta tests, it didn't result in what you wanted. You can do better, meaning that you learned so much during those phases by programming for yourself that now you have the ability to come up with an original draft that is superior to the beta draft that you have now. That is very possible because you're still learning a lot about programming. And in this case, it is perfectly fine to go back and create a new program. If you do so, I highly encourage you to do the same thing I did with the novice program, base the new program off of the skeleton of the old one. Of course, make the modifications and additions necessary, because the draft phase, the brainstorming phase, is the phase where you actually add stuff to the program. But it's to me, it's going to be a good way to recuperate the work you put in. It's still going to take some time, but it's something that can be done. And for the rest, the ideal program, which I call your permanent program, it's the idea of a program that doesn't really need to change because it reached something that is extremely close to perfection, which I will define when I discuss gentleman splits. Perfection to me is flexibility, meaning that there's no such thing as a perfect program set in stone. The program needs to move around. It needs to be adapted to your needs at all times so that you can regulate it like this without even thinking about it, because the mechanisms of the program just are fitting perfectly. Everything clicks. But that is going to take a long time. And that long time might be 1 year, 2 years. For me, my current training plan, I beta tested for 2 years, meaning that for 2 years there were changes. Small tweaks, I took stuff out, I took some lifts out, I replaced them with variation, and I added stuff. And here you're telling me, okay, you told us not to do that. That's true for the alpha phase, not the beta phase. For the beta phase, you can add things, small things, very small things. Don't be adding compound movements. If you add compound movements, just start from scratch because you're going to create chaos in the program. What you can add is nucleus overload, 3 sets of calves here, 3 sets of neck here, maybe double the amount of forearm work. What you want is minimal changes in terms of tonnage so that you don't throw a wrench into the entire equation. That's what's going to happen. And on top of that, the changes cannot happen often. They can't. If you change something every 2 days, just again, start from scratch. The program is too chaotic now. For me, every month, month and a half, 2 months, I was like, oh, maybe do this. Tiny change here, maybe do this. So it means that throughout 2 years, I did, I want to say maybe 10, 12 small changes. And when that was finished, maybe even 15 changes, but really tiny things. And then when that was over, I reached a point where there was no modifications to be done anymore because the beta test was over. And when the beta test is over, the program can just be run forever. In my case, unless I get bored of it, which I don't see myself being bored because I just don't work like that, I'm going to stay with that program forever because it allows me to. But I'll define that again in the Gentleman Split playlist. And that's the end of it. That's the beta testing phase. You just have to keep an open mind. You have to be observant and be in touch with your body. And in reality, you can program from scratch to a perfect program by yourself. You don't need anyone. It's going to take time. It's going to take research, but it's up to you. It's perfectly possible. And guess what? The quality of the program you're getting, even as a noob who doesn't know anything about programming, the quality of that beta tested program at the end is 10 times higher than one that you bought from YouTube Fitness or one that you got from a random forum. I guarantee you I'll put my bank account on it. And that is why you need to learn how to program. You want a big body as a natural, you want to look good, you need to be able to decipher training principles and apply them to your own workouts. It is unavoidable. You need to do it. And with those 3 videos, you have all of the tools, all of the weapons to be able to. So you have no excuses, and I hope you actually go through with it. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.